So this might be the latest I recorded an episode of anything in quite a long time. I've been up since I think maybe like 4:45. But hey, that the later in the day, the more productive maybe you can be. Waylon, where in the world are you? And what do you think of the world has on deck for us tonight?
Yeah, so as you said, it's later than we normally do these things, so I had to rework my brain and be like, hey, I guess we're doing one of these things right now. But I am home in Dallas, Texas, and looking forward to talking about what we're talking about today.
We're going to talk transparency and we're going to talk risk. We might do both, we might do one, but that's what I have in my notes tonight. And I would encourage those that are watching to watch the entire video because you never really know where there's going to be a specific nugget that really changes your perception on something. I hate the word nugget. It sounds like you're pooping on something. And people say it all the time. And I just said it, which must mean it's really late in the evening. But just watch the whole video. You never know when you're going to hear something that changes your entire perspective on a particular topic. So, Waylon, why don't we start about transparency tonight? How does that sound?
Yeah, it sounds awesome. I look forward to covering that for sure.
Funny story to start it off. I went on a little makeup field trip with my kids, and I have an affinity for the legal system. I think I was supposed to be a lawyer. I love arguing about things. And the Pennsylvania Federal Court building is right near the Constitution Center and all that historic stuff. And I look it online and it says you can walk in. The court is open to the public. I would hope it is. It's America, right? So I walk in and I'm like, I got my kids with me and I'm like, I'm here to say court. And they said you can't do that. Now, I don't even know if that was true or not. I look back on my phone and I choose to believe the man with the sidearm at that point in time. That wasn't very transparent. I don't know what court looks like or what happens behind that security gate. But in this industry, what are some important things that an agent should look for in transparency?
Yeah, so I guess I'll preface a lot of the things I'm saying with I think I do a pretty good job of bashing social media a lot of times, but I will say on a positive side of it, I think the advent of social media and I guess building off of the insurance forums way back in the day, which feels like 100 years ago at this point. Those things and the advent of those things has increased transparency, I think, across the industry pretty substantially. Now it also has created some creative ways to not be transparent too. So as an agent looking for transparency, like what do I ask? What things should I be asking about? A couple of things that can quickly show you transparency with your upline or your brokerage or whatever. A couple questions. One, can you send me the comp schedules and levels that I'm going to be at? Number one. Number two, what does your lead program look like? Can I see a lead? Just an idea of a blank lead and what that looks like, how it's generated. Pretty easy way to find out. Is there any ability for upward mobility if I do ever down the road look at building an agency? And if you're new, I do recommend you saying down the road to your upline, because if it's a good upline, they're not going to be excited about you wanting to build an agency before you even gotten contracted. Mm-hmm. Another question is, what type of support and training do I receive by working with your agency versus another agency? Those are simple questions. If the person that you're talking to and looking at working with waffles on any of those or is appalled by you asking, well, good luck, because that's just the beginning of your relationship in this industry if it's a good upline. So
I think there's a balancing act, though, between transparency, understanding the basics, and overthinking the process. Mm-hmm. I jokingly say that by the time I knew that leads cost money, it was too late to pull the plug on this attempt at the insurance business. Yep. I barely had any money. If I knew leads had cost money, I probably wouldn't have done it. But it wasn't that my upline was being non-transparent. He just kind of knew when to expose me to the right kind of things. Mm-hmm. But I think agents can overthink too much and never end up actually selling insurance. So where do you think that line is between transparency and overthinking?
Yeah, and I bring up those questions in a sense of they should be able to answer them for you, but they should also, with experience, be able to know when to shut up and not over-explain. Just because a lead costs X amount of dollars, that shouldn't talk someone out of the industry. Like you said, you wouldn't be doing it if someone would have sat there and explained to you every minute detail of a lead and the cost and what you're expected to spend. That's not how you get someone excited about anything. I was excited about insurance because of what I could make, not
Mhm.
because of what I was going to be spending. My first year, I spent cold door knocking people. Of course, I didn't have lead costs, but it got a lot better when I started spending money on leads. So I found out through arbitration, through screwing up for a year, that, okay, maybe leads aren't a bad idea. Maybe spending some money makes this a little bit more bearable and I can actually do it that way. So knowing when to shut up and not sticking your foot in your mouth is a skill you learn too, because you could over explain to the right person this opportunity and make it sound awful. Like, you mean I got to spend $4,000 a month on paper? Like, I'm
Mhm.
not doing that. That sounds stupid. Well, yeah,
Yeah,
it does if it's explained by the wrong person.
absolutely. What are some good ways to vet your potential upline mentor, business partner? Say you've got a little bit of experience, you're coming off of a low contract,
Mhm.
less than ideal situation because one size doesn't fit all. But let's
Mhm.
say you're looking for a new home. And
Yep.
I don't know everybody. Everybody online seems like they're multimillionaires. I don't really know what is real. How can I vet somebody?
Sure. So again, I always like to start those things with questions. Questions always they either give us the answer that, you know, that we're looking for, or an answer or an escape route out once we get here the answer. So a good question for if you're with a current brokerage or a current captive company or carrier and are looking for a new home, how much business did you write last year? That's a really good question. Did you write any business last year? Because you don't want to be working with someone who isn't up to date or understand what's going on. A lot of people get wooed by, like, I want to work direct with the IMO. Okay, that's great. I understand, but it's also a lot of value in finding agencies that have agency owners that are still doing what you're going to be doing, and teaching what they're preaching. Because
Mhm.
once you get too high up on the Sistine Chapel here, it gets a little bit, muddy up there. Those people are reserved for the politics that go on, not so much for the field force that needs, like, handheld sometimes.
Yes.
So how much business did you write last year? And the other thing, we talk about it all the time, but if you're established, you understand lead programs and the sort, what does your lead program look like? How can it benefit me compared to where I'm at now? And it's a sliding scale, right? That's what I always look for, is like, some people will come from a brokerage and it'll be the advantageous part of our company or our agency would be, okay, we can lower your lead cost, but your contract level stays the same, or it's a slight increase.
Mhm.
Or, maybe the lead cost might be $1 or $2 more, but that's not going to happen more than likely. But let's say it is. And then, hey, we can give you 20, 30 points on your contract. It's like, are you worried about $2 a lead if you can get 30% more and better carrier lineup? So it's a sliding scale, and understanding if the person you're working with can produce, and also what resources and value they can bring outside of just them is valuable to know.
I know we did an entire episode on this. I know that Adam and I are going to talk about it, but I think it's always a relevant topic, especially when I'm experiencing it. Roll up. I think it's a pretty transparent conversation for people to realize that as soon as you start placing people in a hierarchy, you immediately expose yourself to roll up. Person doesn't last, doesn't stick, doesn't do the right thing. 3 months, 6 months, a year later, their debt becomes your debt,
Yep.
and it can be very detrimental to your cash flow if you don't have the proper system in place to prepare for that. um, what are some of the downsides to building that people should probably be aware of when we're talking about transparency?
Absolutely. So some of them blindside you and just kind of happen. It's a inherent risk of building an agency, especially on the life insurance side, because of the nature of advanced commissions. Again, for new people, I mean, seasoned people understand this, but for new people out there, look, you write a policy, you're getting paid for 9 months worth of commission on that policy at the agent level. What happens is, if they fail out of the business, they flop, they start stinking, they leave, their debt doesn't just disappear on a ledger somewhere. They're under someone who may be under someone. That debt will roll to that person above them. If they disappear, that rolls up to the agency. And again, the agency is now responsible for that debt. If they're not, then the IMO that they work with is responsible for that debt, and they get terminated. So the risk is inherent. That's why, some people get named as, like, oh, they're a tyrant, or they require that I buy leads or do this or do that. It's like, well, yeah, that's mostly for you to run your business and make money, because, agency owners that are like that typically know what it takes. And the easiest way to get out of business is to do a couple of things a couple of weeks in a row, not buy leads and not show up. That's really what it takes. 2 weeks of that and you're done. If you're not established a couple of years in. And secondly, those people get mislabeled because that agent struggles with consistency typically. So those are a couple of the red flags as far as transparency goes from the agent to the agency side that you need to watch out for, is like people that make a lot of excuses whenever something isn't going real good, or always have a story for everything. Those people kill me. It's like, man, everything doesn't have to be like this, Shakespearean story. Like, just tell me what happened and let's fix it. Like, I don't need this version of it that you've created. Just what happened and let's fix it. And
I feel like the more Shakespearean the story, the more absolute it's fake. It's just I've honestly, I was watching a story take place over the course of the last few weeks. I'm like, I've seen the show before, and the last person didn't pay. The last person played the same game, wrote the same story. I mean, at this point, I'm not going to be mad or cry about it or throw things. It's not going to accomplish anything, but it's the same story. Excuses. Like, I honestly don't understand, for the amount of effort people put into making an excuse, if they put the same effort into selling insurance, it would probably be a lot more profitable and they'd have a whole lot less excuses.
There's absolutely no doubt about it. There's absolutely no doubt. I mean, like I said, what we do is, I don't want to call it easy, but once you get into the system, and if you're consistent at all, if you have a consistent bone in your body, it's not that difficult. It's much more difficult on you, on your family, on your everything, to sit at home and be mad and like, this is why it didn't work. I figured it out. Like, well, you couldn't even figure out how to do it. How can you figure out why it didn't work? Like, that doesn't make any sense. So yeah, excuse makers and those storytellers are the two that really, as an agency owner, looking down and saying, okay, who do I want to work with? Who do I want to hire? Those are the people you got to watch out for a bit. Again, recognize that up front, it's a little difficult to find them until you've worked with them for a while. And that's the danger. I mean, the question was, what's the risk? Well, there you go. I mean, you want to help as many people as possible. You want to make as much money as possible. You want to build this agency. It does come with risk.
Yeah, I have a theory that you don't really know somebody. You don't really know a carrier. We don't really know a process until you've known it for 6 months. And then you can have a concrete opinion about what the next 6 months is going to look like. But 6 weeks with somebody, 6 weeks, anyone could have a good up and down 6 week period. And also, excuses are convenient. We all have really, really bad things happen in our lives. I'm sure there's a sliding scale of getting a ticket versus getting seriously ill, but like, we all have bad things happen. And when we recognize that, it makes it easier to overcome it together, not think you're the only one that ever has that happening to you. One other one before we move into a risk. I see often on social media, these groups grow pretty big, and they grow on these like 6 layers deep on 5-point spread type situations, where it's fun to bring your friend, your cousin, your uncle, your sister, your aunt, your daughter into the industry. Great. That's kind of how I found myself here. But the difficulty with upward mobility once you get big, when you're 6 layers deep on 5-point spreads.
Yeah, it's very difficult, because then for every spread and every layer that you have, there's also a story attached to it. And as someone who has helped run or seen organizations that build like that versus the other ways that you can build, there's a million models you can build. But specifically those 5 and 2.5 point spread layers, the number one problem with it is, as you said, upward mobility, but also the risk factor that we talked about. You're making 5% on someone that potentially you may have to pay all their commissions back if they fail out, because you're their upline. That money rolls to you first. There's problem number one. 5% is not enough to cover your butt at all.
They don't only roll up 5% of the debt. They roll up 100% of the debt.
Every dime that agent owes. So that's the risk. But secondly, the upward mobility side of it. We go back to transparency there. I understand sometimes it's like, oh, maybe this was an uncle or a buddy or a cousin or someone who brought me in. Now they're making 5 points. Well, what happens in vision 6 months down the road? Your cousin's not really doing anything with insurance. They might do real estate on the side. That's their main gig. And you're writing 30 grand a month, killing it, loving life, writing 40 Medicares a month. You're just absolutely a monster. Amen. You're eventually going to be going to someone and saying, hey man, like, I think I probably should be above this person. They're not even doing this full time. Well, now the person above that person's in a conundrum. Like, crap, what do I do? And imagine how that conversation goes. And then it could take an additional 30 days to get a real answer there, because that person's probably in the field too. And you're bouncing back and forth. And then you're in just the conversation, text message hell. and your emotions are all out of whack because you don't know what to do, and that affects your field days where you're making your money. So it's a lot deeper than just like, oh, it's upward mobility, not that big of a deal. It can be, because there's a story for each level. Believe me, that people don't just end up places in a contract because they filled out the wrong link. I mean, it does happen, but not that often.
Filled out the wrong link. Please read to me the upline section before you click the next box if you're not sure what box you just clicked on.
It happens, but yes.
Exactly. Oh, my favorite. You're actually in the wrong FMO's portal in Opt. That's why you can't see your leads.
Yeah.
I mean, but I think it's okay to admit you're not sure about something. You don't know if it's working right. You think you've done it wrong. I make errors like all the time. Like my favorite phrase is, it's probably operator error. That's why it's not working. I was convinced for weeks that Cincinnati Equitable's application just didn't work. No, it was me. I was doing it wrong, not them.
Yep.
But like, if I have those kind of problems with Cincinnati Equitable and other people have trouble with Opt, like, ask for help. Like, if you cannot get into your Opt, you probably cannot get into your Foresters portal or your mutual back office or something important. Insurance toolkits. Maybe you don't know how to log into it. It's okay to ask. Exactly. I walked into the wrong visitor center because I couldn't find the Liberty Bell, and I walked up to the guy. Dumbest question you get today: which way is the Liberty Bell? He's like, not a dumb question. You're just in the wrong building. Yeah. It's okay to ask. Let's talk about risk before we wrap up this evening. Risk is oftentimes like your body telling you, I don't know if you should do that, but sometimes you should do that because it's really a growth moment in disguise. You shared perfectly about that with us this morning. Can you kind of replay that conversation?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, any research you do on the mind and the brain and your ability to push past your quote unquote comfort zone, that's the common term you hear when you really read about anything that involves improvement or challenge, and realizing that your brain's job, and you talked about this morning, Chris, your brain's basically its primary function is to keep you alive. It's like, let's stay alive. Like, we don't want to die. Let's stay alive. Unless you've got something chemically wrong going on up there, you probably want to be alive, like the majority of us. So anything you do that's difficult takes you out of any familiarity that your brain has ever experienced. And immediately, as we describe it, that's outside of your comfort zone. So your brain's saying, please don't do this. We don't know what the hell we're doing. We can't do this. There's no way we should be doing this. Stop. Like, all the sirens are going off. There's people, I can just imagine little people running around your brain, like shutting stuff off and pulling levers and trying to shut everything down. And
what is that Disney movie where like the memories are balls?
Yes. I don't know.
Like a command center. No, don't do that. Exactly. Stop doing that.
Exactly. And it tries to flag emotions that are negative and finds a way to get you to stop, tries to. And that's where your improvement's made pretty much at all times. If you ever look back on your life and take stock of the things that you sucked at when you started and you eventually got pretty good at, that's usually what was going on. You just were ignoring the fact that your brain was like, don't do this. You shouldn't be doing this. You were ignoring that, and you were just continuing to push forward little by little, inch by inch, until eventually you were just better at that thing. I can say firsthand experience, insurance. I was absolutely awful at this for like 6 months. I was terrible. I couldn't sell anything. And I even had a script. Like, it wasn't like I had a script I had to read, and I still sucked. Like, I was not good. I was just good at talking to people. I couldn't sell stuff. That was insane, but got pretty good after 18 months of talking to strangers. So that was a prime example. Like, look, your brain's job is to keep us alive. And the way that they keep us alive is by keeping us out of uncomfortable situations. The most uncomfortable situation is doing something that you're afraid of or you don't think you're going to be good at. But that's what it's all about, is just pushing through that and knowing that, like, look, it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to be quick. Usually going to be pretty slow and kind of painful. I'm a big gym guy, so you made that reference this morning. It's the same thing. You don't squat 405 pounds your first day in the gym. It takes years of squatting unless you're a freak. And some of you guys on here probably are super athletic and super strong, but it takes a long time to build up that muscle and continually progressively overload. And it's the same thing for your brain when it comes to any activity. You have to progressively overload your brain and stimulate your brain in certain ways to improve on anything, even when you don't feel like you're that comfortable. That's the whole point.
But then my parallel to that was like, risk seems scary and your brain's like, we don't know what this is exactly. It's probably dangerous. But if you're seeing other people do it and they're not dying from it, then it's proof of concept. Like, you don't have a whole lot of money when you get in the business, pretty much never. And you're asked to spend a lot of money on leads that you really don't have. But if you can see other people buying the same pieces of paper and talking to the same old people and producing, that's proof of concept. Like, it really isn't that risky when you see other people doing it. If someone's done it before, Adam's favorite line, then why can't I do it? If they've built a big agency, why can't I? If they can squat 400 pounds, that's pretty freaking crazy. But like, it isn't that impossible. It's just you haven't got there yet, and other people are doing it, so go do it.
Yep, exactly. And like I said, like, risk, once you understand what the true risk is and that everything has risk, then it makes it a little bit easier to understand. It's like, there's an opportunity risk for everything. What is the opportunity risk for you not getting your license or not buying leads versus buying them? That was the metaphor I kind of used this morning, is like, on Friday, yeah, my card's going to be charged for $1,200, but what's the risk if I don't get charged for $1,200 and I don't get any leads? Like, what's that risk look like? Because if I do that for 14, 21 straight days, I might be out of the business. I might be done, like completely done. So I'm going to lose the freedom of time that I have, the control of my life that I have, just because I don't want to spend money on a piece of paper. Like, make it simple in your head. There's risk for every decision. Just some of them are more comfortable than the ones, like I said, spending $1,200 for pieces of paper. But when you can turn that $1,200 into $8,000, it feels pretty good.
The crazy part about this business is because it's not like a Chick-fil-A franchise where you have books and analytics and income statements. Then your regional checks in on you and reviews them with you on a Friday as they work their way through the region. In this business, you're done before you even know it. Like, you're already not making money because you don't have the reports to see it. I mean, a few IMOs do, but you're really screwed way past that point by not buying leads, by not working, by not being consistent. You're like stabbing yourself to death without even realizing it, and then you're dead.
Yep, that's it. Exactly. It's a fast, painful death. It's not a slow, painful death. It can be a fast, painful death, because now you've created this debt machine and you're out of the business. You're out of a business that you almost have no chance at re-entering, which sucks, because what we do is pretty awesome for a lot of reasons.
And I also think the reality is that maybe people don't know what the minimum threshold is for sustainability. Like, if you're making $38,000 a year in this business, why are you taking the risk, paying your taxes, dealing with the danger of it, dealing with the responsibility? You're not successful. I mean, you have so much more possibility at that point. I always preach in final expense, if you're not issuing 10 to 12,000 a month, you're not sustainable. Like, you're one problem from failure. Your family's sick, your car's broke, your dog died, your kid's ill, the leads came back late, something went wrong. One thing, you're done. If you're not writing 10 to 12K in final expense, what would you say is the minimum production threshold on like Medicare Advantage?
Yeah, I mean, so the thing about Medicare is it's weird. So, the later that you write business during the year, the more prorated it's going to be and the less you're going to earn. So I highly do recommend people, and that's honestly where I'm at right now. For a field agent, I'm almost recommending people start with Medicare, but also keep in mind, you really need to be working with someone who teaches you how to compliantly cross-sell. Because these are the same folks that we're visiting with, on the final expense side. They're the same people. They quite literally are the same people. And usually sometimes can be even better than our final expense leads, because they wouldn't fill out a final expense mailer, but they will talk to you about their Medicare benefits, and you can usually help a lot of those folks. Chris did this last week on several appointments where he went in for Medicare and he was able to help these folks, again, compliantly with their life insurance. They just put them in a much better situation. It was a no-brainer. So I say that to say, 20 to 25 is a number throughout the year, which is very doable monthly if your focus is Medicare. And off of those 20 to 25 enrollments, you should be doing minimally 5,000 of final expense a month. That's a very low number and very doable just by asking, some simple questions and having the right carrier lineup.
Yeah, I think if I don't know what the exact threshold is yet, but if you're writing 25 Medicare plans and you're not writing 5K in final expense, you're not trying. Like, ask asking one question, looking for the policy, asking about the magnet, straight up asking, do you have anything for coverage for when you die? You don't? I got a solution for that. ACA real quick. ACA is a 3 to 6 month burn before you make any kind of profit. I mean, the crap sounds so simple. It's getting more regulated, but people often don't realize you don't make any money for 3 to 6 months on that side of the business, right?
Yep. So anybody that does or tells you about ACA and doesn't say this, I believe they're doing a disservice. Like, you're not going to get paid for 60 to 75 days for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care what anybody says. That's how long it takes. 60 to 75 days, you're not going to be paid because, and I'm just trying to be realistic with you. So ACA is a money man's game, meaning you have some money and you want to dump it into something and make more money with it. Because it absolutely does that. I promise it will if you follow the system. But it's not something, and again, unless you've got the money in the bank, I wouldn't even recommend making that your focal point until you've got some money where, like, I'm good. Like, I'm a little bit mature in my insurance experience thus far, and I've got, 5-6 months worth of bills, and if, all hell freezes over, I'm good to go. That's when you should start doing ACA. It shouldn't be like I'm going to jump into insurance to do ACA again, unless you've got the 401k that you want to cash out and burn through for 60 days.
Last one, minimum annuity level production to be sustainable. And then we'll put a wrap on it. I know annuity is far longer burn, far bigger elephants to catch. But for an annuity producer, what is like a minimum level of sustainable production?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to depend on some factors like comp and things, but $150,000 a month to $200,000, because again, that gets you up to the $1.5 to $2 million producer, and that's a good amount of annuity business. And if you're doing that all on the FIA side, you're looking at anywhere from 6 to 7.5% at the street level agent commission, and that's again, you're looking at a pretty penny there. It's not bad, and there's not as much risk on the annuity side as there is on the life side, because those clients are a little different, if we're being honest. So, that brings you over the 6-figure mark and brings you into that territory where it does make it worthwhile to, again, control your time, pay your taxes, deal with all the crap, renew all your licenses, pay for all the extra stuff, the E&O and everything else. So I think around that number. But again, that's why a lot of annuity producers are migrating over to selling Medicare, is to get in front of those same people just by helping them with Medicare. So I think the more and more we see this, the more and more you see the need to diversify and do kind of all these things in some kind of hybrid form or fashion and ask the right questions in a home. But if you're just simply doing annuities, that $1.5 to $2 million run rate a year would get you kind of where I think it would make sense.
Last one to wrap up. We do this at the end. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe. Waylon, give us the biggest mistake you've witnessed over the course of the last 2 weeks, as anonymously as possible.
Absolutely. So, and I always forget this, and it always makes me think of it on the spot, which is a good thing, because I usually say something stupid when I think. So biggest mistake I've seen probably in the last week and a half or two. Well, honestly, I mean, just to go back to our point today, this has happened and a couple of times. I'll stay anonymous with everything, but I'll come at it from an agent perspective. I think it's foolish that any agent would let a bunch of debt roll up to anyone if they ever have any intention whatsoever in staying in the industry or having success in the industry. Not only do I think it's burning a bridge, but I think it's pure ignorance to make statements such as, oh, well, they earned enough off of me anyways.
I love that one.
That's my favorite one. Or things like, I'm going to pay it back. I'm going to pay it back for 2 or 3 weeks or a month or 6 months or a year. Those don't go forgotten. They are not forgotten by probably anyone. And it's just not something that is kosher in our industry. It's not something that goes over lightly, and people at the top of the industry or the bottom of the industry at this point now, everyone communicates. So those things get out there, and it's not a good look if you, again, ever intend to do anything in this business or really anything, because it can harm your business track record pretty quickly. My
favorite was an individual who runs a very large Facebook group who defended the debtor. I mean, he couldn't even run a Boston market anyway. So what would I expect, let alone a successful insurance business? But so be it. That's the insurance forums for you, and a story for another day in a different group in a different time. Like the video, comment, subscribe. Allow us to continue to grow this and bring good quality content. Waylon, thanks for jumping on late in the evening, going into extra time. And I guarantee there's at least one thing in this video somebody can take something from and make themselves better by watching. Thanks for watching.